What if I told you that a simple letter could change the course of your life? Not a letter from someone else, but a letter from you to you. My dad did this like when he was in his 20s, and it changed everything for the rest of his life. My dad started his career as a supervisor in a civil construction company. It was his first step into the industry, but in his mind, he was already thinking 10 steps ahead. Even in those early days, he wasn't just looking at the construction sites. He was visualizing himself running his own projects someday, making those big decisions, creating something on his own because he always wanted to be an entrepreneur and run his own business. He dreamed of becoming a subcontractor, someone who didn't just work under other people, but who had the power to take his own projects. He wanted to be in control of his future. But here's the thing. Dreams don't always come with a blueprint. He knew where he wanted to go, but a man in his 20s, completely new to the industry, he didn't know exactly how to get there. And then one day, he did something different, something that would change everything for the rest of his life. If no one was telling him how to get there, maybe his future self could. He picked up a pen and wrote a letter, not just any letter, a letter to himself, his future self. He wrote down the kind of man he wanted to become, the kind of business that he needed to run, and the risks he needed to take to refuse to let go of the vision that he had. And then he would go to a post office and mail these letters to himself. Back then, letters didn't come instantly. It took between 3 to 4 weeks before the letters arrived. But when it arrived, he used to take them to a park and read it. Something strange happened. It didn't feel like he wrote it. It felt like it came from someone wiser, someone who knew exactly what needed to be done. And every time he read it, it reignited the fire inside him. And immediately he would start reaching out to the right set of people, connect with his friends who has become a subcontractor from being an employee, and probably look for any opportunities with them. Slowly, the man in those letters started becoming real. And eventually it happened. My dad went on from being an employee to running his own business where he had a few hundreds of people on his payroll before he retired. If that's the impact that these letters could do to my dad's life, then imagine what it could do to me, you, and everybody else. So I decided to just share this story. This was truly inspiring the first time when he told me that he did something like this. And I was in total awe because I just asked him if you read this somewhere in a book or who gave you this idea. He told me that humans have this amazing ability to lift themselves up whenever you have a strong desire. And that's how this thought even came up to him in the first place, where he wanted to inspire himself. For anybody who doesn't know me, I'm an intellectually curious guy, and I always try to find scientific reasons on why certain things work a certain way. And I decided to do some research on why these letters would work for someone. That's exactly what we will talk about in this section. Have you ever told yourself that you're going to start something, and then the longer that you avoid, the more uncomfortable it gets? That's called cognitive dissonance, and your brain hates it. When there is a gap between where you are and where you say you will be, your mind pushes you to close that gap. Think about it. If you publicly announce that you're going to run a marathon, you are way more likely to train for it. Why? Because now your brain starts seeing your current self and the marathon self as two different versions, and it wants to bring them together. So when my dad wrote letters to himself, he wasn't just writing. He was creating a version of himself that already existed in the future. He didn't write, "I want to be a subcontractor someday." He wrote, "You're going to be the best subcontractor out there, and you're going to take control of your future." And here's the thing. Once he put that on paper, his brain had no choice but to respond. The gap between who he was and who he claimed to be became too uncomfortable for your brain to ignore. So he took action. He started seeing opportunities, reaching out to contractors, and putting himself in the right places. Because now if he didn't, he would be breaking the identity that he already claimed. And eventually, that identity became real. The future self effect. Why do most people procrastinate on their biggest goals? Because the future you feels like a stranger. You know you should have money, work out, start that project, but it never feels urgent. That's because we struggle to connect emotionally with ourselves, with our future selves. A study by neuroscientists showed that when people think about their future self, their brain treats that person like a stranger. Literally, like a different person entirely. That's why it's easy to say, I'll start next week, and it doesn't feel like it affects you today. But my dad unknowingly hacked this. Every time he mailed himself a letter, he was forcing his brain to see his future self to be real. He wasn't just daydreaming about vague success or jotting down goals. He was sending himself a physical message, a frozen moment waiting in time to be discovered. And when he opened it, it didn't feel like he was in the past. It felt like a direct challenge from the version of himself who already believed it was possible. That's why it was impossible to ignore. That letter wasn't just a reminder. It was a proof that his future self already existed. And when faced with that, you don't wait, you just step up. Now, enough about the science, and I challenge you to try this for yourself. But here's the thing, you don't have to do it exactly like how my dad did. Pick what works for you from the following 3 approaches that I would quickly run through. The first method is the classic letter method. Write a letter to yourself describing your goals and vision. Mail it to yourself, or you can write an email and schedule it using the future send option of Gmail so that it can be delivered later. Now, after you have received it and when you read it, see if it inspires you like how it inspired my dad. The reason this works is because it feels more official, because it's you who sent that letter to yourself, and that delayed reading makes it more impactful. And I've already given the science behind why you feel that way. Now, the second method or approach is for the visual thinkers, and I call it the video message method. Record a video of yourself stating your goals and your aspirations that you would like to achieve. Speak as if you're already successful. For example, if I have to record a video, I would be like, hey Ari, if you're watching this at the end of this year, you would have reached 1,000 subscribers for your new YouTube channel. Something like that, where you write it in a way that it looks like you're already successful. Now, after recording this, set a reminder to watch it maybe after a month or 3 months or 6 months, according to your timeline. Why this works? Seeing your own face and voice makes it real and much more emotional. And the last method, simple but yet powerful, and this is for the logical thinkers. I call it the logical planner. Start setting 1 year, 5 year, or 10-year goals and write it down on your journal. Set reminders every few months to constantly review where you are against those goals. Adjust your timeline as needed, but stay committed to those goals or your vision. Why this works? It's great for people who prefer structured tracking over emotional letters. And personally, I've used the video method and the last method, which has helped me in achieving some of my dreams. Whichever one you choose, commit to it, because your future self is counting on you. My dad's letters weren't just words. They were a blueprint, a bridge between his dreams and his reality. And now looking at the life he built, I know it worked. So now I ask you, if your future self could receive a letter from you today, what would you want it to say? Spread positivity, stay happy. Cheers.